When Superman was out saving the world, I was pretending to be him and making out with his girlfriend at home, but this was actually my job all because I awakened a superpower that lets me mimic others. Those superheroes who save the world to keep their identities from being exposed would hire me to act as them in their daily lives, and what broke my peaceful life was accepting a mission from a #1 hero, Justice. When I arrived at the Hero Guild and went to Justice's office, what I found was Justice lying on the ground as a cold corpse. In shock, I instinctively reached out toward his body. Just as my hand was about to touch him, a powerful surge of energy exploded and sent me flying back, and the finger I had just touched suddenly grew massive muscles. At that moment, even though I didn't understand what happened, I clearly knew the energy that burst out earlier was definitely my superpower. The next second, I immediately ran out of the building. The only way I could deal with this now was to report it to the Superhero Association, but in my panic I bumped into someone, and that person was my regular client Sam Gold. Looking at him, even though I thought he was a jerk, he was still a top-tier hero. I was about to explain what happened to Justice when suddenly a tentacle lashed out, piercing through Sam Gold's abdomen. With ice at the doorway appeared none other than a tentacle Homelander. The next second Sam Gold's whole body burst into raging flames, unleashing massive energy as he lunged at the tentacle Homelander, but the creature easily leapt away, dodging the attack, then commanded the tentacles behind him to strike at Sam Gold. Sam quickly kept releasing flames to burn them, but he didn't notice the trap the tentacle Homelander had left behind, grabbing him tightly. As the tentacles slowly tightened around him, Sam Gold met his end, and his body was tossed aside. After Sam Gold the superhero died, the nearby civilians weren't spared either. The Homelander began an indiscriminate attack, intending to slaughter everyone in the building. Those people hiding and running were still waiting for Justice to save them, but what they didn't know was that Justice was already dead, and he died upstairs. Suddenly a child's crying nearby caught the Homelander's attention. The next moment he sent a tentacle flying toward it. I, who was hiding nearby, rushed out to block it. Suddenly, in the next second, my superpower activated. I transformed into Justice and even gained Justice's abilities. Seeing this, the tentacle Homelander was shocked. With a slight pull, I ripped off his tentacle, then instantly teleported through him, appeared in front of him, and threw a punch to his face, knocking him flying. The next second, I grabbed his swinging tentacle again, pulled him in, and slammed him into the opposite wall. Looking at this powerful body, I felt an overwhelming confidence. The tentacle Homelander recovered and charged at me again just as I tried to gather power inside my body. Suddenly, my body started deflating like a leaking balloon. My strength was draining away as I didn't know how to handle the incoming attack. Suddenly a golden beam blasted the tentacle Homelander. With the explosion of energy, he was knocked back, and beside me appeared a pink-haired girl. She was Justice's fangirl. As I was thinking how to brush her off, the tentacle Homelander suddenly got up and ran outside. Noticing it, she quickly fired an energy cannon. When he turned back to look for me, I had already slipped away. Behind him appeared a woman in a black cloak. She had been hiding in the shadows watching him, and she noticed me escaping to avoid trouble. I immediately started destroying evidence, shredding all of Justice's files. After packing all the shredded files and throwing them into the trash, suddenly there was a sound behind me. Then a woman crawled out from my shadow. It was the black-cloaked woman. She then pulled out the shredded files and in the next moment restored them back to their original state. She immediately confirmed that I had witnessed Justice's death. Suddenly she launched an attack at me. Seeing this, I quickly jumped to dodge, then activated my power again to transform into Justice. After dodging a few attacks, I was about to strike back. Suddenly my body wavered. My left leg lost its superpower support. At that moment of distraction, the shadow struck me, and I could only use the power of my left arm. As the black-cloaked woman attacked again, I slammed my left arm into the ground, dug out a piece of rock, and blocked the incoming blow. As long as I got close to her, I still had a chance to turn the tables. As the rock shattered, I had already gotten beside her. The next second, I threw a powerful dragon fist at her. Just as I was about to continue my assault, my body suddenly froze completely. I had stepped on her shadow. Her shadow had the power to control people. Then many dark shadows emerged from it, binding me. Just when I thought I was about to die, she snapped her fingers and the shadows withdrew. She then grabbed my face and said, "If you agree to become Justice's double, I'll let you go," but she also offered a monthly salary of 1 billion. The reason she came to me to impersonate Justice was simple. If the news of Justice's death got out, it would cause social unrest. The society that had finally stabilized would be thrown into chaos again, so before they found a solution, they needed someone to impersonate Justice. The woman then introduced herself. "My name is Laura. I'm a hero from Justice's squad. Justice's files also have my information." Just as she said, the files indeed recorded her background, but I still had concerns. Right now I couldn't even last 1 minute as a real man. How could I possibly replace Justice? Laura then said she would help me fool the public as much as possible. Then I began seriously thinking about the risk. Seeing I hadn't answered for a while, Laura thought I was rejecting her offer. As she was about to leave in disappointment, I quickly said, "This risk is too high. Raise it to 2 billion a month." The next moment I regretted it. Looking at the mountain of documents, I was locked in a small room studying for 2.5 weeks just to barely finish. Laura had long been waiting for me to finish so we could head to the Superhero Association. The next moment we arrived at a logistics center. On the surface it really looked like one, but after identity verification and entering a hidden passage, we finally reached the real Superhero Association. Inside gathered all the world's most famous superheroes. After passing through a luxurious hall, Laura led me to a huge door, then told me to wait outside. Inside the conference room were the core members of the 4 superhero teams. At this moment, the disappearance of Justice had thrown them into heated arguments. Many heroes were convinced that the missing Justice was already dead, while his supporters fiercely argued back. The atmosphere grew more and more tense. The vice leader of the Superhero League Banshee shouted to stop everyone. What's most important now is to find out where Justice is. Then he threw the question to Laura, asking if she'd been in contact with Justice recently. She immediately said she hadn't, but Pandora exposed her lie. She had gone to Justice's office before, and there was still uncleaned blood left inside. Hearing these words, everyone immediately fell silent. They lifted their heads and looked toward the road. Laura also understood. If there wasn't a reasonable explanation now, it would be difficult to settle this. Just as he grew anxious, the main doors suddenly swung open. Justice appeared in the hall. And that was me in disguise. After entering the conference room, I naturally took the main seat. Facing these scheming superheroes, what I needed to do was project Justice's aura. Fool them. Neville, who was already dissatisfied with Justice, immediately questioned. Why were you missing for so long? And why was there blood in the room? Seeing this, I slowly explained that I was ambushed. And during the missing week, I was secretly investigating who the assassin was. Everyone immediately showed shocked expressions. They couldn't imagine what kind of person would dare to assassinate Justice, the #1 superhero, and even injure him. Then I showed displeasure. Tell me another thing, Pandora. Who allowed you to enter my office without permission? Seeing my current imposing manner, she lowered her head in fear and quickly apologized. Although I barely muddled through this event, I was still criticized by everyone for being too kind, which gave Homelander the chance to strike. Just as I didn't know how to respond, fortunately, Arkady spoke up. Let's put aside the matter of Justice for now. Today, we are gathered here for a more important mission, the Annihilation Operation. To keep the superheroes who represent Justice in a dominant position, we must suppress the 4 strongest super squads, surround Central Park, and wipe out all the Homelanders inside. If this battle succeeds, the Homelanders will suffer a heavy blow. After the tasks were arranged, the 4 squads set out separately. Although I was now impersonating Justice, I had absolutely no intention of fighting Homelander. But for such a critical operation, if Justice didn't participate, many would grow suspicious. So this time, I not only had to join but also had to arrive at Central Park first with overwhelming power to prove myself. Though I was unwilling, thinking of that $2 billion price tag, I could only grit my teeth. After picking up the communicator, I dashed toward the chaotic city. At this time, the superheroes and Homelanders in the city were already fighting fiercely. But the situation was completely one-sided, with superheroes crushing their enemies. The pink-haired fangirl who had met me once saw me arrive and excitedly greeted me. Just as I responded, a Homelander suddenly attacked me from behind. With just a light swing, I sent him flying. This time, I had only used 1/10 of this body's power. I realized now I could conserve energy to extend my transformation time. After greeting the pink-haired girl, I hurried toward the park center. Along the way, many Homelanders tried to block me, but I easily took them down. After defeating several small fry in a row, I quickened my pace toward the park. To be the first to arrive, I gathered all my strength and sprinted forward. At this speed, without a doubt, I'd be the first to reach Central Park. Just as the park came into view, a long spear suddenly shot toward me. A man who looked exactly like Pantheon slowly approached. He was Caesar, a famous figure among the Homelanders. For fun, he had once slaughtered dozens of superheroes alone. And I knew I couldn't defeat him quickly in my current state. I immediately decided to bypass him and run toward the park. But when I tried to move to the side, Caesar seemed to read my intentions. He stomped the ground, radiating brilliant golden light, and appeared behind me in an instant, grabbing me and throwing me backward. A golden cage appeared around us. Caesar laughed loudly. Welcome to my dueling arena. Inside the cage, I felt my body grow heavier. Was his ability to increase pressure? I had no choice now. I could only bravely throw a punch at Caesar. The moment our fists collided, a massive burst of energy erupted. But Caesar didn't budge, easily catching my punch. It was because his strength was amplified inside the arena. His attack speed was now so fast it was almost impossible to dodge. Seeing this, Caesar pressed his advantage, thrusting his spear fiercely. Although I sensed his intention and tried to block, it still pierced my side. Seeing how easily he wounded me, Caesar mocked loudly. I didn't expect the famous Justice to be so fragile. The reason he could injure me so easily was that I was conserving power to prolong the transformation. Since I couldn't end this quickly, I decided to unleash my full strength. Caesar, still basking in the thrill of injuring me, prepared to use his strongest attack to kill Justice. But when he struck with full power, things didn't go as he expected. I easily caught his ultimate blow. In the next moment, unstoppable power burst from my body. Caesar froze in fear. Before he could react, I smashed his face with one punch, disfiguring him completely. At that moment, I finally understood the true power of justice. If ordinary superpowers are like a cup of water that depletes as you use it, then Justice doesn't have a cup, he has an entire ocean of energy. Before, I couldn't access that ocean. Now, although I could use it, I still couldn't fully unleash its potential. But taking down Caesar was easy. I charged toward him, and after a fierce exchange, I found an opening and killed him with one decisive punch. Yet Caesar still believed he could win. He stomped the ground again, releasing more light and stacking another dueling arena layer. Once that layer was added, my speed clearly slowed. Caesar thought it was his chance to counterattack, thrusting his spear with all his strength. But I didn't flinch. Gathering all my power into my arm, my fist met his spear head-on. Like breaking bamboo, my fist shattered the spear instantly and then naturally struck Caesar's face, sending him flying from the massive impact before he passed out. After finally defeating Caesar, the tall building behind me suddenly collapsed. It turned out to be smashed by superheroes from the Swift Rescue Squad. Just like the report said, the Swift Rescue Squad would do anything to win. Before I could think further, the building behind me was struck again by shockwaves from the battle. Already on the verge of collapse, the skyscraper came crashing down toward me. Just as I was about to dodge, a sudden sense of compassion flared up. I worried about the unconscious Caesar. After hesitating for 3 seconds, I decided to save his life. But that hesitation meant I couldn't escape the collapsing danger in time. Seeing the building falling down on me, I quickly took a defensive stance. After the deafening crash, I surprisingly didn't take any damage. A figure suddenly appeared before my eyes. It was Luke, who arrived just in time to block the collapsing building. When he saw me still holding Caesar, he immediately yelled, asking if I'd lost my mind. I almost got myself injured just to save Caesar. I could only reply sheepishly, "Isn't this what justice would do?" Suddenly, Caesar beside me regained consciousness, broke free from my grip, and lunged toward Luke. In the next second, he slashed at Luke, but Luke showed no panic and continued lecturing me. "This is what you get for saving a Homelander. Caesar is the leader of the Homelanders in this area. Even if I die, I'll take Caesar down." Caesar then threatened Luke to back off and turned to taunt me again. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, I turned into a blur and attacked Caesar. When he came back to his senses, Caesar had already been blown away by my overwhelming strength. I understood then that I could no longer hesitate. These people had no conscience. I was impersonating the world's strongest superhero, living in his mansion, and even flirting with his wife. After I took down Caesar, the operation was perfectly completed. But far away, in a place we hadn't noticed, Justice's fanatic supporter, Hester, had been observing for a long time. In his eyes, Justice was still merciful, but something felt off. The scene shifted. After finally wrapping up this operation, I was completely exhausted. Luke, seeing no one else around, began to ask if I could absorb other superpowers. I had actually tested it before. When I touched the corpse of a superpowered person, there was indeed a reaction, but I couldn't absorb anything. It felt like something inside my body was rejecting the power. For now, there were only 2 conclusions. Either I could only absorb one ability, or Justice's power was too strong, blocking any others. After resting for a while, Luke and I went to join Justice's Guardian team to celebrate. We didn't expect that there were eavesdroppers nearby. Neville and Trem were plotting on this joyous day how to replace Justice's position. Let them enjoy their moment for now, they won't be laughing later. The next morning, I woke up in Justice's massive mansion. Looking again at the 20 billion I'd earned yesterday from this job, what could be better than this? After a brief moment of joy, I had to face the issue of Justice's death. I picked up the freshly printed death report. It showed no signs of external injury or poisoning, only traces indicating he had used his powers before dying. Just then, the door opened, and Hester walked in. I quickly hid behind the sofa. I didn't understand why the records didn't say he had free access to Justice's room. Once inside, Hester immediately began searching for Justice. When he got close to the sofa, I had already transformed into Justice and started training. I casually asked him why he came without warning. Suddenly, Hester threw himself into my arms, his face blushing as he worried about Justice's condition. I panicked and called out his name to stop him, but he didn't stop. Hugging me tightly, he said, "When it's just us, you should call me baby." I was stunned. The files didn't mention anything about Justice and Hester being involved. Seeing me silent, Hester anxiously asked if I didn't like him anymore. After a moment's hesitation, I couldn't resist the beauty trap and embraced him. He continued acting coy with me, but as we flirted, he slowly drew his long sword and slashed at my head. Caught off guard, my face was cut. From my reaction, he had already realized I wasn't the real Justice. He prepared to sever my arms before interrogating me. Hester wasn't vice-captain of the Guardians for nothing. He was not only a master swordsman but also had unparalleled speed. His ability was that of a speedster. After a brief exchange of blows, he roughly figured out this fake Justice's power and continued his assault. Things had already escalated too far to back down. I activated my full power and blocked Hester's incoming strikes. Hester retreated slightly. Your power may be like Justice's, but you're much weaker than him. I knew this fight could only be won by going all out. In the next second, I launched a powerful punch at him, but unfortunately, in Hester's eyes, my speed was too slow, and he dodged with ease. He then turned into afterimages, attacking me from all directions. Under his relentless assault, even though I fought back with all my might, he still managed to cut me, leaving a wound at my side. Before I could react, Hester pressed the attack, aiming to sever my arm. In that instant, I didn't even have time to block and was stabbed in the chest by his sword. I seized the moment, grabbed his arm, and punched him in the face. But Hester, after taking my hit, stood firmly in place. I tried to follow up with another punch, but it hit nothing. He had vanished before my eyes. He reappeared behind me, then vanished again, unleashing countless sword slashes from every direction. I quickly took a defensive stance to protect my head, but Hester aimed for my arm. Just as my arm was about to be severed, a shadow rose from the ground, firmly grabbing Hester. The figure who appeared was Luke. I had been impersonating the world's strongest hero, flirting with his wife, and now she found out I wasn't him. She was about to cut my limbs off. At the critical moment, Luke arrived to stop Hester. Seeing Luke, Hester finally backed off. You'd better explain Justice's situation clearly, he warned, or I won't hesitate to deal with you too. Luke had no choice but to explain that Justice was already dead. Hester couldn't believe it. How could someone as powerful as Justice be assassinated so easily? And worse, someone who couldn't even fully use Justice's power was now taking his place. He was sure I'd slip up eventually. Seeing this, I reminded them that our main task was to stabilize the situation once Justice's death was revealed. Hester coldly said there was no time. The assassin would surely strike again. But I confidently stated the assassin wouldn't come. Yesterday, I had impersonated Justice at the Superhero Alliance meeting, and the rumors of his death were immediately crushed. Since then, the assassin had made no move, which meant they believed their assassination had failed. After this explanation, Hester left with a grim expression. Watching him leave, Luke began to explain. The current Superhuman Association only has the Guardian faction that can truly be considered superhuman. If it weren't for Justice's overwhelming power suppressing other battles, the Superhuman Association would have already fallen apart. And Hester is Justice's most loyal follower. Now that he knows the exact time of Justice's death, it's certainly hard for him to accept. Suddenly, I received a message, then was taken to the most crowded cafeteria to eat. Feeling the mocking stares, I started asking what this was all about. All you need to do now is eat here. The assassination of Justice has already spread. Now they need me to show up in public to clarify the rumors. And coincidentally, today the Superhuman Association is holding an event. The event is the 4 battle factions dismissal. Such an important event is something Justice would definitely attend. But today, there's no need to fight. Just sit in the audience with authority. At this moment, I noticed that the high-ranking members of the other factions had already arrived. Then Hester showed up. I originally wanted to greet him, but seeing his icy expression, I decided not to provoke him. Soon, the dismissal officially began. The 2 superhumans in the arena were from the Weaver faction and the Guardians. The Guardian in overalls attacked first but was easily dodged by the pink-haired man. Then the pink-haired man gathered something in his hand and smashed it hard toward the overall guy. The overall guy only stepped back a few steps, suffering no real damage. The next second, the pink-haired man gathered more power and struck again, but the overall guy gained nothing and was pinned to the ground. The overall guy quickly surrendered. But the pink-haired man didn't plan to let him go. He was about to cripple him. Seeing this, I was about to step in when Laura stopped me. This is a 4 factions battle. Even Justice can't interfere. In the arena, the pink-haired man shouted, "Raise your hand and it counts as surrender." But a powerful air pressure burst from his hand, pressing the overall guy into the ground. He then tried to twist the overall guy's arm. Suddenly, I appeared behind him and grabbed his arm. I furiously questioned him. As a superhuman, are you happy torturing your comrade during a dismissal? Unexpectedly, he sneered. What, are all you Guardians such trash that someone has to defend you? In front of the crowd, I couldn't lash out, so I swallowed my anger and warned him to stop. But the pink-haired man ignored me and kept provoking, even trying to attack me. Energy gathered in his hands as he shouted that he would knock Justice, this outdated superhuman, off his pedestal. But in the next instant, I crushed the bones in his hand. As long as you raise this hand, you admit defeat, I said. The fake strongest hero was about to face Trelm, whose ability countered his. What kind of intense battle would erupt? Just as I crushed the pink-haired man's hand, a hand stopped me. It was Trelm, the Weaver faction's leader. As a leader, you can't take part in this fight. If you want to dismiss someone, try me. As he finished, Trelm gathered blood-red energy in his hand and attacked. Caught off guard, I had no choice but to take the hit head-on. In the stands, Laura and Hester broke into a cold sweat for Justice. Before this, the fake Justice couldn't even beat Hester. Now facing Trelm, he was doomed to lose. Moreover, Trelm's power clearly restrained Justice. Though I didn't want to clash with Trelm, he pressed harder and harder, leaving me no choice. The next second, I unleashed my punch at Trelm. A massive shockwave exploded, but Trelm effortlessly caught it with one hand and began absorbing my power. Then he gathered his strength and punched me fiercely. The powerful energy pierced through my body. I countered with a 3-hit combo, but Trelm was unfazed and retaliated with several blood-red blasts. Only then did I realize Trelm's ability. He could absorb all kinds of powers. No matter how strong the attack, he could absorb it and send it back. As my strength drained, I began to fall behind. Cranlu mocked, "Is this really the power of Justice the Guardian? So weak." Hearing that, the crowd began to doubt too. I knew I couldn't keep losing. I had to unleash all the power I could use and defeat him to prove Justice's strength. I exploded with energy, attacking Trelm, but he easily absorbed it. Suddenly, my power surpassed his absorption speed. Even if I wasn't as strong as Justice, I couldn't lose to Trelm. Seeing his power overwhelmed, Trelm unleashed everything, but even then, he couldn't overpower me and began to fall behind. Our battle spread to the audience. If it continued, the entire arena would be destroyed. Suddenly, an enormous gravitational force pressed us down. It was Arcti, the Alliance faction leader, who stopped us. Furious, I didn't care how strong he was. The next second, he fully released his power. "Do you want to destroy this place?" he roared. "This ends here." With no reason to continue, both sides retreated. I fell into self-doubt. Was what I did right? At that moment, the overall guy I saved came up and apologized. Without me, his arm would have been ruined. The other heroes burst into cheers for me, and seeing that, I no longer doubted myself. Justice would have done the same, I thought. The strongest hero Justice was now impersonating a woman, getting intimate with a man, and even living in his room. After the 4 factions' dismissal ended, the Guardian faction represented by Justice still had problems. Compared to the other factions, the Guardians had fewer members, and most of them were weaker. Because the evil faction was small, few wanted to join the Guardians. If this continued, the Guardians would eventually be replaced by new forces. If the Weaver faction gained absolute power, with their profit-first mindset, they might side with Homelander. After thinking, I asked if we could form alliances with other factions. Laura retorted, "With who? The Rescue faction is too extreme. The Alliance faction only cares about themselves. The alliance might be possible, but forming an alliance with them would be very hard unless we have internal leverage." Hearing that, my eyes lit up. "That's easy. You just need to pay once for Justice's appearance fee." That night, Laura and I watched the party crowd below. William was down there. He ranked 3rd in the Alliance. Unlike other factions, rankings in the Alliance were based on popularity. William rarely played superhero, but he hosted shows every day, so he had huge influence in the Alliance. Today, the Alliance's vote will be held. William is one of the voters. You just need to manipulate his vote. My plan is to directly disguise myself as a beautiful woman. The next moment, I approached him. Seizing the chance, I bumped into William. I spilled red wine on him. Then it was time for my performance. I quickly began apologizing. I put on a weak and delicate demeanor. I made physical contact with him. I wiped the red wine off his clothes. Then, naturally, we went back to his house together. The moment we entered his room, I immediately transformed my arm back to my true form. I knocked William out with a single punch. Then I searched for the meeting platform they used for voting. I transformed directly into William. Using facial recognition, I cracked the password. I entered the meeting. The Alliance meeting had just begun. The Alliance faction leader was organizing it. Once everyone arrived, he got straight to the point. "You should all know the goal of this meeting. At the upcoming Hero Conference, We need to decide whether to cooperate with the Guardians. We'll decide by vote. Minority obeys majority. Let's start voting. But what surprised me was that this seemingly useless William actually held voting power second only to the leader and vice leader. 985 votes. But now that I controlled William's vote, I should be able to change the outcome. When the voting ended, Arkti looked at the result, slightly surprised. But he said nothing, simply announcing the meeting's dismissal. I'll follow your voting decision. Seeing that, I finally let out a long breath. I reverted my transformation and left. After returning, I told Laura that 2 billion was well spent. The next day, when William woke up, he actually thought he'd just drunk too much. In a daze, he cast his vote. But his bodyguard beside him noticed something off and said, "Please give me the list of people you invited yesterday." While the Real Justice was out saving the world, I was pretending to be him and getting intimate with his girlfriend. And because I kept impersonating the strongest hero Justice, I even gained power equal to his. Without transforming into Justice, I could easily flip the bed. I even smashed a huge hole in the ceiling. Seeing that scene, I was stunned. Because I hadn't transformed into Justice at all. So afterward, I went straight to Justice's office to discuss this with Laura. Casually picking up a pen nearby, I was about to show her. But the moment it was in my hand, without even applying force, the pen shattered into pieces. Seeing this, Laura said, "This shows your body is adapting to Justice's abilities. Your power mimicry has improved. Superpowers are like muscles. The more you use them, the stronger they become. At first, you thought you were only mimicking Justice's appearance. But you actually gained his abilities. Seems your potential is even greater than we thought." As the discussion ended, the meeting was about to begin. I immediately transformed into Justice. The theme of this hero association meeting was how to distribute heroes. Nilan was the first to speak, saying he wanted to put most heroes into commercial activities. But Arkti, the Alliance president, interrupted him. Because they had already voted to support the Guardians. First, they would focus on eliminating Homelander, who threatens humanity. Nilan, still unhappy, called for another vote. But even Zeus, who was in the middle of chasing Homelander, took time to respond. I also support the Guardians' proposal. With everyone's support, Nilan had no choice but to accept the decision reluctantly. Only after this proposal passed did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. But as I reverted my transformation and left the conference room, I found someone blocking me on the rooftop. It was William's bodyguard from yesterday, the one who had witnessed the vote tampering, Lance. Seeing Lance, I immediately asked, "What's your purpose coming to the Guardian side?" Lance smiled and replied, "That person next to you has a power that lets them mimic others, right? It's an interesting ability. But I don't understand why you came to our gathering yesterday." Seeing this, I immediately played dumb, pretending not to understand what he meant. But Lance directly produced evidence. He had already seen my transformation through surveillance. Faced with this, I didn't know how to explain. It was my first time doing this kind of mission, and I wasn't cautious enough. Lance then asked coldly, "So the Justice appearing now is also your disguise, right? It's a bold thought, but I'm sure it's you." The next moment, he pulled out a tooth and threw it into the sky. The tooth exploded above us. In an instant, the shattered tooth turned into a massive bone shield, trapping me inside. Lance then formed a bone spike in his hand. "There are some things I want to know, even if I have to kill you." Hearing that, I shouted back, "Why are you here? What do you want?" But Lance didn't plan to explain. He suddenly unleashed his power and attacked me. Startled, I quickly dodged to the side but was still grazed by his bone spike. I leaped back to create distance. Feeling the wound on my neck, a surge of anger rose. Why do these heroes always want to kill me? Is it just because of my ability? Lance grew impatient and yelled, "Transform into Justice now and fight me." Seeing Lance's arrogance, there was no way I'd transform under these conditions. It was the perfect chance to test my own strength. Lance also realized I wouldn't transform. "If that's the case, I'll just beat you until you do." Watching Lance approach, I confirmed one thing. This man wasn't the one who assassinated Justice. But that didn't matter now. If I admitted I was Justice, this wouldn't end easily. But the moment I struck back, Lance easily dodged. "Your control over power is terrible. Your attacks are full of openings. But if you used Justice's power, you could barely fight me." Of course, I wouldn't admit I was impersonating Justice. Hearing this, Lance decided not to hold back anymore. Bone spikes formed in his hand as he thrust them toward my chest. Luckily, I reacted in time, blocking his attack. But the next second, Bone spike sprouted from his elbow and slashed at me. I quickly crouched to avoid the strike, then grabbed him and rammed him toward the wall's edge. With a powerful crash, Lance slammed into the wall. I gave him no chance to breathe. Grabbing his head, I smashed it with a headbutt. But to my shock, the one who took damage was me. Lance had formed a bone mask to protect his head. In the next moment, Lance rushed at me again. I quickly,